Sansevieria, AKA the snake plant. Some folks know it as the mother-in-law's tongue. Now, when it comes to this plant, I love it. You probably love it because it's so low maintenance. You're not gonna be all over it every single week, watering it, caring for it. You can push it into those dark corners of your home and it'll still tolerate that light. That's why we all love it. Today, I will cover how to identify a beautiful snake plant, how and when to water it, proper potting, soil, fertilizer, finding the best light for it, how to propagate it, and also some special care and maintenance that will help you make sure your plant friend thrives. There's all different types of snake plants out there. You might have your Phytura superba, your Phytura robusta. You might have your actual cylindrica. They all originate from West Africa, which is a more drier climate. So when we're talking about care, they're probably great for beginners because they are drought tolerant. When shopping for a snake plant, you want to make sure that you are picking out a snake plant that has, for one, a look that fits you, whether or not you want one that has the yellowing on the edges or a more green coloration here. You want to first make sure that you're bringing home a healthy snake plant. Are the stems of the actual snake plant upright, more, I would say, plump, thick? Can it actually stand a punch or two, a slap or two? The one thing to focus in on here is the health of the actual foliage itself. You want to avoid any yellowing that might be taking place on the leaf of the snake plant. You want to avoid brown spots if possible. Before you leave, make sure you check for pests either below or under the leaves. Check the top of the soil, under the pot if possible, to make sure you're bringing home something that is going to be safe for the rest of your plant friends. Now that you have your snake plant, let's talk about the soil and pot it will live in. Now, if you're looking for a more detailed guide on how to pot a plant, please check out my previous chapter on potting plants. But when it comes to your snake plant, it's very important to pick out the right vessel for this plant. It's a desert plant, so it wants its soil to become dry. In order to do so, you want to find a planter that is porous, so ceramic, maybe a terracotta, concrete, something that can pull that moisture away from the soil to keep your plant healthy. Now, we're talking about terracotta. This particular type of planter, it is breathable. It absorbs that moisture and you'll start to see it pull to the side of the pot. So when you buy something like this, yes, it looks like this for now, but over time, you'll start to see all of that moisture pull to the side of the pot, adds a bit of texture, adds a bit of, I would say, age to that planter. So when you purchase a pot like this, know for a fact over time, it will look like this. And that is all moisture being pulled to the sides of your pot, which is good for a snake plant. Now, when you're thinking about what to fill that pot with, to surround your roots with, you want the proper soil mixture. Now, for a snake plant, I would do a mixture, let's say, of about 70% potting mix, and then I would do about 20% of perlite. Perlite's good, you sprinkle that in, and then you're gonna do 10% of sand, adding that sand in there as well. You're creating a mixture that can help pull, evaporate all that moisture fast so that your roots aren't sitting in wet, damp soil, and this will keep your plant healthy. You can see how this clumps up more versus this where it's falling apart, very grainy, very open. That's not the only thing you're gonna think about here. You also are gonna consider the fertilization of that plant, because just like all of us, all living things, they need food. And when you first purchase your snake plant, it's coming fertilized. It's been fertilized at that plant shop. So after a year of watering it, it's going to lose all of the nutrients in that soil, and you're gonna have to place it back in there. Now, fertilizer can come in different ways, whether it is a liquid fertilizer or if it comes in capsules, as you can see here. You can also add just fresh soil to your pot by stripping away some of that old soil and adding new nutrient-rich soil. Now that our snake plant is potted, it's fertilized, let's talk about maintenance, starting with watering. When it comes to the snake plant, during spring, summer, you can only water them every 2, maybe 3 weeks. But during the colder months, winter and fall, it might be every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks watering. So in that case, you always want to make sure, regardless of how many weeks it's been, how many days it's been, that the soil is completely dry. You can check it by sticking your fingers around the edges of the soil or sticking your fingers down in the soil. Now, when it comes to watering that plant, you always want to make sure that you're using the right temperature water. Lukewarm, not hot, not cold. Because hot and cold water can shock your roots and kill that plant. So just be considerate of that. Now, when you decide to water your plant, just like others, you're going to do it nice and easy, slow and steady around the entire pot, making sure that every single root in there has a moment to pull in moisture. That is important. And because you haven't watered this desert plant in weeks, it's going to need to be watered completely through, all the way through all the roots and all the way down into your base tray. Now, when we're talking about water, water for the snake plant is one of the reasons people kill it. Overwatering. So you want to be aware of that. Signs of an overwatered snake plant is soft yellowing tissue. As you can see, all of the tissue is turning very yellow and very mushy. And then when it leans like that, that is a clear sign that it has been overwatered and now it is dying. But an underwatered snake plant leaf will show signs of just, let's say, browning, dry browning on the edge of the foliage. But if that happens, what you can do here is you can kind of trim that off. You can use your nail maybe, trim that off, and there it is, it's gone. And now you still have the rest of your leaf looking great. But if you overwater, there's nothing really you can do here. So once you see dying foliage happen like this is probably a good time to start pruning that plant back to at least give all of the foliage that still has good life in it the time, the moment to really grow, to really thrive. So when it comes to the snake plant, knowing that it's a desert plant, you want to make sure that when you bring them into your home that you're placing them in the same type of climate of their natural habitat. So if you have a snake plant, you want to have it in a drier area of your home. Don't mix them in with your more tropical plants that need humidity. So you're going to avoid at all costs trying to mist these plants. Definitely don't place them under a plant that you are misting. Now, let's talk about the most important thing your snake plant needs: light. When it comes to placing the snake plant in your home, you actually have the ability to place it in so many different areas. Unlike other plants that really need a lot of light, the snake plant, while it does thrive in bright indirect light, it actually can tolerate lower amounts of light. So here in my living room, on my bookshelf, where it's about, I'd say, 5 feet away from the window, it's getting enough light for it to still look good, to still grow. Closer to the window would be best. But for someone who's really trying to figure out how they can get away with filling their home with greenery, especially in a space where you're trying to add more color, add more life, just because it's not thriving in this spot doesn't mean it is suffering. So while it won't grow and bloom and continuously push out new growth here, it will look great. I'm gonna still look out for signs that it's telling me that maybe it isn't getting enough light and maybe I should push it closer. Signs like browning happening in the interior of the actual leaf itself. Another thing, especially when we're talking about light, is rotating your plants every other week as well so that every single part of the plant can thrive. Now, while you're in the process of maintaining your plants, a lot of pruning takes place. Sometimes we'll have drier edges that we want to make sure we clip off. You might have a leaf, like I do here, that broke off. I could then prune that off because, it's broken. But because of the power of the snake plant and how you can propagate it, I could just make a nice clean cut anywhere on that snake plant leaf. This is called either leaf cut, but also tip cut. Make a nice clean cut. I like to do a 45-degree angle there, snap it off, and then place it into a vessel with nice clean water. Over time, as you can see here, from where you make that cut, making sure that it's 45 degrees, you will start to see your roots develop, Then over time, once it develops and grows more, you can then place it into soil, creating a whole new snake plant. But you don't have to use just the cutting method of propagating that snake plant. You can also use division and separation method. And that involves basically taking the entire plant out of its pot, breaking up the soil, and separating a cluster of those leaves from the rest, roots and all. That's division and separation. You have all your roots there. Now you have your cutting. You're then going to take your pot and a base tray. You're going to add your soil. Then you're going to take your cluster of roots and your stems, place them in there, and there we have my new little snake plant, and that is division and separation. So we just learned all of the proper care and maintenance for your snake plant, how to water it, how to propagate it, how to really make sure that it gets everything it needs to properly thrive in your home. You now are empowered to become a better plant parent and know how to make sure all of your snake plants thrive.